Greetings and salutations, my fellow engineers. Today we're going to be going over the fine art of Beat Detective. Beat Detective is an algorithm in Pro Tools that allows you to quantize live audio, specifically drums. It's not a perfect process because it's based off of Pro Tools' tab, the transient technology, which gets you really close, but you still have to do some manual editing to get the best result possible. So today we've got a 2-bar passage of drums, and we're going to make sure that they are right on the grid. Now, be aware that putting your drums right on the grid can certainly take away some of the human feel. So you want to keep your eye on that as you go through. So the first thing you need to do is isolate your drum tracks, make sure that that's all you're seeing in your screen so that you can focus on them properly. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to select all of my drum tracks and create a group using Shift-Command-G, and I'm going to call this drums. I'm going to be using this group on and off throughout the process. One of the most important aspects of editing drums is that you can't move any one drum element in time without moving the whole group. If you do that, you'll have double hits because the overheads see that hit is happening, the hi-hat sees the hit is happening, and the snare, of course, might be the one you're moving. So in order to maintain proper phase coherency and make sure you don't have any double hits or anything like that, you have to move all your drums together. Okay, so I've got my drum group active, and I have selected a small segment of the song, again, about 2 bars here that we're going to deal with. And you should always work in smaller segments when using Beat Detective. Both Avid and other engineers agree that Beat Detective gets less accurate the longer the segment is. The tendency is to want to do the whole song at once, but because you're going to be editing every single beat, that could get you lost really quick. Plus, again, even Avid says that Beat Detective is more accurate in small segments, usually 4 to 8 bars. So typically that's how we like to work. We also would deal with drum fills independently, especially if there's like triplet rolls in the toms or anything like that. But this is just a straight ahead sections right at the beginning of the song, and this is what we're going to be dealing with. So I've got my short segment selected, and the first thing I'm going to do is fuel the screen with my selection, and that's going to be option F. And now I can have a good full-size look at what I'm dealing with. Okay, I'm going to suspend the drum group for now using Shift-Command-G. That suspends all active groups. And the first thing I need to do is select the tracks that I'm going to use to create my bar beat markers with. Typically, you want to use the kick and the snare top because these are the most accurate and closest to the microphones. Like you wouldn't use the kick out, for example, you'd use the kick in track. Okay, sometimes we do the hi-hat, but be aware that the hi-hat, once quantized, really takes the human feel out. I usually leave the hi-hat alone in order to maintain somewhat of a human feel. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a selection across just the kick and the snare, because these are the 2 tracks I'm going to use to create my beat markers with. Okay, now let's open up Beat Detective, and that's Command 8. I'm also going to jump over to slip mode for this. Okay, Beat Detective has a couple pages, and the only ones that we're going to use for editing live drums will be the bar beat marker generation, the clip separation, clip conform, and edit smoothing. You might also want to make sure that your tab the transient button is highlighted because you'll be needing it at some point. So, all right. So the first step is we want to make sure that we have a proper selection. And as you can see, if I were to zoom in, that some of the kick drum there is actually outside the selection itself. And let me zoom in. There we go. So you want to be sure that you incorporate all of the actual audio there. So I'm going to hold down Shift and just lengthen my selection. Now, something you need to be aware of, sometimes with Beat Detective, if I do this, it could throw it off a little bit because I don't have an exact number of bars selected. So we're going to start with the bar beat marker generation page, and let's deal with the middle section about capturing the specific selection we have. So the first thing I want to do is hit capture selection. And there we go. So it's telling me that although my actual selection starts at bar 512, beat 4, and 955 ticks, I had to do that in order to incorporate the entire kick drum because he hit it a little early. The center section should represent what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to start at bar 513, beat 1, and then at bar 515, beat 1. Does that make sense? Okay. And then make sure your time signature is correct. We are in 4/4. 16th note is fine. And again, I've already captured the selection, so I'm good. So let's move over to the right-hand side. And here's where we need to analyze the transients themselves in order to create the bar beat markers we're going to use for quantization. You have 3 different sensitivity analyzation modes here. High emphasis, low emphasis, and enhanced resolution. I typically use enhanced resolution, but you just kind of have to play around with that and then your sensitivity slider here in order to get the results you're looking for. So I'm going to hit Analyze, and then let's turn up the sensitivity slider until we start seeing beat markers. And there they are. And you want to be sure that you see a beat marker for every hit that you want represented. Let's see. So I've got snare, kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare, and my first kick there. Okay. So it looks like everything is good. Now beware, if this is too high, even though I'm not seeing any now, you could see what we call false triggers, or let's say there was some hi-hat bleed in the snare track, that might trigger a beat marker to be created. If that's the case, if you hold down, if we go to our grabber tool, and you need to get rid of a beat marker, you can hold down Option, and see how the little minus sign appears, and you can click on a beat marker and it would go away. So that's how you can remove unwanted beat markers if you can't get what you're really looking for with the sensitivity slider. But it looks like we're good. Now, remember that I said that Pro Tools' transient detection algorithm is good, but not exactly perfect. So we need to manually go through and make sure each one of these bar markers, or beat markers, sorry, is in the right place. So in order to do that, I'm going to zoom in. And by the way, I am in command focus mode, so I'm zooming in using R and T. And we need to make sure that every single one of our beat markers is on the transient. As you can see, that one was pretty far off. So you want to move it, again, using the grabber tool to where it's supposed to be. Now I'm going to come down to the Beat Detective window and use the Scroll Next button. And that's going to jump me to my next beat marker. And let's go through and check each one of these and move them to make sure we can get them right where they're supposed to go. Now sometimes it lets you move them and sometimes it doesn't. This is kind of the beauty of Pro Tools, as it were. So that one is not letting me move. And then this one, let's see, it's not letting me move any of these. There we go. Just have to grab it in the right place. That one looks good. That one's a little off. Let's just move him. Come on. There we go. That one looks good. That one's a little off. Let's move him over. So you want the beat markers to be right at the edge of each transient. That way you'll accurately be quantizing. If you don't, this one's being a little iffy. I think it's because I enlarged my cursor so that you guys could really see. Let me go back real quick. By the way, to change your cursor size, as a side note, System Preferences, Universal Access, and I'm going to lower my cursor size a little bit. Should allow me to accurately grab these. Well, maybe not. Again, oh, there we go. All right, yeah, that's what it was. So again, you want these to be right on the edge of the transients so that we can accurately move these. And this thing is really being finicky today, just as Pro Tools loves to be. All right, almost done. Now you can see why this is easier in small segments, because you have to do this for every single beat that you're dealing with. Okay, now that we're done with that, I'm going to hit Option F again to fill my screen. There we go. Okay, I'm going to use my selector tool here. Move Beat Detective down. Now I need to spread these beat markers. Oh, it looks like I've got some false ones now. All right, look at that. So let's turn our sensitivity slider down until they go away. And they are not going away. Okay, so when you have issues like this, we're going to go to our grabber tool. And I'm going to hold down the Option key and click on the unwanted beat markers. There we go. And away they go. Perfect. So again, I'm just doing the kicks and the snares with no other interruptions. All right. So now I need to spread this across my entire drum track. So I'm going to reactivate the drum group using Shift-Command-G. And then all you need to do is shift-click on any one of the tracks within the group, and it will spread the selection across the entire group, which then will spread those beat markers we made across the entire group. These are used to chop up the clip so that I can chop it up into the individual beats that we chose to do. So now let's move on down to the clip separation page. And all that has changed on Beat Detective down here is the word separate. So let's hit separate. Boom. And it's cut the clips for me right on those specific beat markers. Okay, now let's go to clip conform. And this is where we can choose exactly how we want the audio to conform. So if you look over here on the right-hand side, you can either just do standard, which I use Pro Tools' grid pretty straight, or you can use groove, which does allow me to choose either a groove I've already created. Like let's say I've got a groove from a drum loop and I want to make my live drums conform to that feel. I can do that, or I can use some pre-made grooves from Cubase, Logic, MPC, different swing feels and different things like that. I will say, watch using a swing feel with live drums. Just have your drummer play a swing feel, because that usually doesn't come out very well. So I'm going to make sure the swing box is unchecked. Now strength. At 100%, that means that the transient itself will move 100% to the grid where it's supposed to go. If I set this at like 50%, it will split the difference between where it is now and where the actual grid is. For example, the kick drum might go part of the way to beat one, but not all the way. This can be helpful if you don't want to make the drums sound super robotic. You can just quantize part of the way. But we're going to do 100%. And then all that's left to do is hit conform. And as you can see, the audio did move. I'll show you that again. Watch the audio. Hit conform. It has now moved each one of these beat markers right on the beat. And so now what we need to do is just take a listen. And I'm going to engage loop playback, which is numeric 4. And let's make sure that it sounds, nice and in time. Now remember, you're going to hear clicks and pops of the audio being cut. You'll hear the gaps that have not been crossfaded yet. But what you're listening for is that it sounds like it's supposed to in time. Okay? That is rigidly in time. All right. So now that we've got the audio moved where we want it, let's go to the next page, which is Edit Smoothing. And again, over here on the right, you'll see some differences. We've got fill gaps and crossfade, and then a crossfade length. I don't like my crossfade lengths to be super long, so we're just going to do 5. And that's milliseconds. And the fill gaps will fill all the gaps by trimming the clips out. And typically when you're editing, we like to trim clips from the right to the left. However, the way Beat Detective does is that it takes both the right and left clips and it joins them together in the middle, which can give you some double triggers and some odd cymbal sustains and that kind of thing. So you're still going to have to go back and check once it's done, check each of the edits and make sure there's no audio problems. So let's do the fill gaps and crossfade. We're going to hit the smooth button. And now we're done with Beat Detective. So we're going to close it. Now we need to listen and then go back and fix any of the edits that might need fixing. Remember, you guys, it is a computer. It's not perfect. Okay, so there's still a good bit of manual editing involved. So let's check it out. That sounds pretty good. Let's just go in for a closer look to each one of these. And we'll just check each one of the edits real quick. That looks good. That looks good. You want to, again, make sure you don't see any of the hit that was the original hit versus the one that was moved. And that's what we're kind of looking for. And making sure we don't have any weird like hi-hat edits or anything that can cause things to sound unnatural. But as I go through, everything is looking toasty. And this is a rare occurrence. Just be aware that Beat Detective usually involves a good bit of manual fixing after you've done with it. A lot of people say they don't like Beat Detective, it doesn't work. That's nonsense. It's just because you haven't taken the chance to actually go in and check everything super thoroughly to make sure that it's working right. Okay, so we now have our drums. They're edited very well as far as, you know, putting them right on the grid anyway. And now what I would do, if you zoom out, you can see how dark that looks. We don't want to see that kind of stuff. So what we would do is, we were going to want to consolidate our tracks to smooth out these clip edits, because Pro Tools uses processing power to read through a bunch of edits and clips. And you can minimize this by consolidating your tracks in order to make sure that Pro Tools isn't having to read as many edits in real time as possible. Also, automation, a lot of automation that Pro Tools has to read in real time will take up some processing power as well. So the next thing I want to do is, before I'm done, I'm going to go to each one of my tracks. I'm going to rename it. I'm going to, well, first I'm going to duplicate it, sorry. So the last step I need to take is I need to duplicate my tracks and consolidate the audio. Okay, and this again allows me to eliminate the extra processing power it takes for Pro Tools to read through a bunch of edit transitions. So to duplicate all my tracks, since they're together as a group, I can simply hit Control, Command, and \, and it duplicates them for me. Now I need to rename each one of them, and I'm going to use the word CONS for consolidated. And this will just take a minute. I'm kind of a slow typer. This way I can keep track of my editing process using my playlist. It's very, very handy. And you really need to do this throughout your editing process, no matter what it is you're editing, to keep really good, well-labeled playlists. Because again, if I were to consolidate these and I were to have not done a playlist of just the edits, I wouldn't be able to go back and fix anything. And we always want to leave ourselves room to go back and fix. Okay, so that's done. And now I'm going to select my drums. Oh, let's go back to grid mode, actually. Let's make a nice even selection here. All right, and I'm going to hit Shift Option 3. And that's going to consolidate them. And now they look all pretty. And let's take a listen. All right, it's as if we were never there doing any editing, and the drummer thinks that he played the most amazing performance of his life. So that is the essence of how Beat Detective works. Once you've done this to the entire song, then you'll be good. And again, it takes a while, to get used to this. And the quick keys really help. So there you go. That's Beat Detective in a nutshell.